It's a pleasure to see you all again this week. To our loyal regulars, you're practically part of the furniture by now, and we're delighted you keep coming back. And to our new subscribers, welcome aboard. You've joined us as we attempt the grand restoration of a Victorian house on Dartmoor with plenty of tea, the right tools for the job, and just enough British grit to keep things moving. This week we're going house hunting. Well, not strictly true. We're rewinding to the very start of our adventure so we can take you on our journey. Many of you have asked how we found this house, and why this was the one for us. So today, we'll open the door to the homes we visited, the ones we adored, and the ones that slipped away. All of which, in the end, led us here to the slightly crumbling, wholly irresistible house we now call home in the heart of Dartmoor. House number 1 was, without question, one of our favourites. Tucked away on the border of Shropshire and Herefordshire, it carried the kind of quiet grandeur that only centuries of standing through storms, sheep, and questionable architectural decisions can bestow. The property itself was a Grade 2 listed house, which is a charming way of saying legally protected ruin with character. At first sight it was both beautiful and tragic, like a once dashing aristocrat who had been left a little too long at the village fete. The most pressing problem, and I do mean pressing, was subsidence. The entire house seemed to be slowly bowing under the weight of its own history. Steel strapping, and not just a little but great rusty bands of it, had been bolted around the structure like the world's largest orthopaedic corset. Enormous pins had also been driven through the walls in a desperate effort to keep everything vaguely vertical. The effect was rather like seeing an elderly relative in a great deal of medical equipment. You can't help but admire their perseverance, but you're quietly concerned about how long they'll last. Stepping inside was like wandering into a time capsule, albeit one that had been left in a damp cellar. The entrance hall tilted at a rather jaunty angle, giving us the unsettling sensation of boarding a ship that had already run aground. Floors sloped, ceilings sagged, and yet there was something undeniably captivating about it. The dining room was lined in a beautiful linen fabric with original hardwood floorboards underfoot. Throughout the house, stone mullioned windows framed the light, and fireplaces remained intact, each one decorated somewhat eccentrically with nature's finds. In the living room, a display of animal skulls was arranged with curatorial pride. One suspects they had all been gathered from the estate itself over the years, which I found both macabre and fascinating. An extraordinary corridor stretched down one side of the house, its original terracotta tiles now slumping gently into the earth beneath. Clearly, a house of this age had little in the way of foundations, so wherever the soil moved, the tiles obediently followed. The main stairwell was magnificent, though my photographs hardly do it justice. I had been warned that if one can slide a hand into the cracks of a wall, one should be concerned, and here that rule was vividly confirmed. As for the attempt to hold such fissures together with the marvellous invention known as sellotape, well, that was optimistic if nothing else. Upstairs, the bedrooms were plentiful and filled with a lifetime's worth of remarkable finds. The master bedroom, with its raw plaster walls, which I adore, was graced once again by those glorious stone mullion windows still holding their original lead frames. The house could not have been arranged more perfectly for a magnificent interiors photo shoot. Everywhere you turned, there was a photograph waiting to be taken. Rooms already styled to perfection, though entirely by accident. I love interiors like this. The colours, the textures, the memories embedded in the very fabric of the place. Every corner, every wall carried a story. And it was, in its own way, utterly alluring. Now I know you're probably sitting there watching this and thinking they must be mad. And yes, you'd be quite right. This house was a complete and utter money pit beyond comprehension. When I say that, if you weren't doing the work yourself, you would easily spend over $1 million restoring it to its former glory. But I cannot tell you how amazing it was. The layout was extraordinary, and upstairs carried such personality, a blend of the tiniest, most magical little rooms, alongside generous bedrooms that could once again be sumptuous and spectacular. And then there was the house's throne room, or as we prefer to call our outside privy, a throne with a W. Gothic in every sense, it still had its original wooden seat, a medieval mullion window and lime green walls. Private, moody. What more could one ask for? The upstairs corridor, lined with windows that overlooked the back courtyard, was equally captivating. As you walked along, the paint crumbled softly from the walls, revealing yet more layers of history. The colours, accidental though they were utterly beautiful. You couldn't recreate it, even if you tried. From what we understood, the house was a probate property. The 4 adult children simply didn't have the funds, nor perhaps the desire to attempt its salvation. It had been placed on the market for the sort of price one might expect to pay for a semi-detached modern terrace. Tempting, until you considered the reality. At least £1 million would have been needed to address its many issues and bring it respectfully into the 21st century, all while satisfying every requirement of a heritage officer. And truth be told, even £1 million might have been a little light. Needless to say, those were not the sort of funds available to us, despite how wholeheartedly we had fallen for the dream of rescuing this beauty. Here, for comparison, is a glimpse of the house back in 1968, when it was sold to its most recent owner. To return it to that original glory would have been nothing short of an epic undertaking. The next house was in North Devon, and once again we fell instantly for this Georgian beauty. The front half of the property was proudly Georgian, while the back half was even older. The rooms were extraordinarily generous, though the upstairs floors had such a slope you could practically launch a downhill marble toboggan run from one end to the other. The bathrooms came in delightful shades of pink and other pastels. Plaster was crumbling elegantly from the walls, just what we love, and acrow props were already in place to ensure the roof didn't join us in the sitting room. As if that weren't enough, it also came with a full suite of outbuildings, not to mention 40 acres of land, the sort of package that could have been a remarkable project in its own right. Sadly, the house went to auction a week after we returned to the UK, having lived abroad for 25 years. There was simply no way to line up a bank in time. Apparently, after a quarter of a century overseas, one must first prove that one is indeed British, and that you are in fact you, and, bafflingly, a British passport and a British birth certificate does not achieve that. But that's a story for another day. As you can probably tell by now, we were always searching for a renovation project. After many years overseas, and the last 10 spent rebuilding and restoring a house in Australia, we've rather caught the renovation bug. We clearly collect crumbling houses. This building was in North Devon and was rumoured to have once been a town hall, or perhaps a magistrate's court. The story went that guilty parties were even hanged from its high rafters. The scale was certainly epic, but it was definitely not what we were looking for this time around. Next came another Georgian house in North Devon, and I must admit, I lean more Georgian than Victorian. This one really stole our hearts, and we almost put in an offer. But on our second viewing we discovered work had been done without listed consent. The roof tiles didn't match the historic terracotta of the area, and to complicate matters further, part of the house and garden still belonged to an elderly neighbour. In the end, the gamble was simply too great, so we led with our heads instead of our hearts. From North Devon we drove to Badminton, where a beautiful old rectory was on the market. Strong and full of character, it had winding corridors, servant quarters, and a cellar with vast barrels once used by monks for brewing. There was even an extraordinary 18th century laundry, 3 stories high with its original wooden ceiling still intact. Outside, a working water pump led to a walled garden with a secret gate into the churchyard. A true treasure, but clearly another money pit certain to sell far above its asking price, so we left it for someone with deeper pockets. The last property we'll show you today was another strong contender, a set of Hopkilns. We loved the idea of transforming it into a New York-style open-plan home with its beautiful red brick and timber frame. We visited 3 times, even placed an offer, but the owner had his own plans and struggled to let it go. This was in November and December, just as our Dartmoor house came back onto the market. His indecision proved a blessing. It meant we could step in the very moment our Dartmoor Diaries house reappeared and place an offer straight away. Within 24 hours our offer was accepted. The house was ours. Apparently no one else was quite foolish enough to take it on. So here we are. After 25 years working overseas, we returned to the UK and, having paraded around a string of magnificent money pits, we realised Dartmoor was always where our hearts belonged. We'd both spent our childhoods here, climbing tors, dodging rain showers, and learning that wellies are a lifestyle rather than a choice. So really it was less of a decision and more of a homecoming. We had always said that if we were ever to return, it would only be for a house in the very heart of Dartmoor. And naturally it had to be epic. Epic in scale, epic in charm, and epic in the sheer amount of work required. So there you have it. After searching high and low, we decided high was best and landed close to the very highest point on the moor, and that's where our new renovation project begins. It is the first time in centuries that our house has been up for sale. According to the Evening Standard, it was described as a historic house, released due to the royal family's change of guard. When King Charles acknowledged Prince William as the Duke of Cornwall in 2022, William took on the responsibilities of the Duchy, and as part of those changes, this house was one of the very rare properties released from its portfolio. The house itself is around 4,000 square feet of pure renovation chaos, every square inch a fresh opportunity to question our sanity. It also came with a 2-story granite coach house, beautiful but undeniably sliding south, with subsidence issues we'll have to face in the future. Locally, it was quite the surprise to see a house like this on the open market for the first time in centuries. It's an unusual prospect on the moor, where most historic homes for sale are 16th century stone farmhouses in dire need of attention. This one, though much younger than its counterparts, requires just as much work, possibly more. We officially became custodians at the end of March 2025 and got to work straight away. The house had been empty for around 2 years and was cold, damp, musty, and mouldy for good measure. No one had been looking after it, so our first task was to clean it from top to bottom, just to make it safe to live and work in. Soon after, we moved in so we could tackle it between our day jobs. There is a huge amount to be done, and as we've mentioned in earlier episodes, much of the work carried out since 2010 was very poor. So the first months have been about undoing, correcting, and making those spaces safe and strong once again. It's going to be a long journey. At every corner we seem to uncover a new horror. But once the key pieces are done, we'll return to the bedrooms, already stripped of plaster, and bring them back to life. Get them breathing again, insulated, and finally, the fun part, sourcing, styling, and decorating.